Transit Unplugged. I'm your host, Paul Comfort, and welcome to a very special edition of Comfort's Corner. Today, we bring you 3 interviews with folks involved with the top 40 under 40 Mass Transit Magazine Awards for this year. This program recognizes individuals under the age of 40 who have been very impactful in their role in public transportation. We kick it off with an interview with Mischa Wanek-Libman, the editor of Mass Transit Magazine, who tells us about the program itself. And then today we have Marco D'Angelo, who is the CEO of CUDA, the Canadian Urban Transit Association, and Ivan Rodriguez, who works in Jacksonville Transit Authority, who's one of their top government affairs people. He talks about his background and some of the roles he's done, and Marco also tells us about some of the things happening in Canada. And these are some of the top leaders in our industry. 2 weeks from now, we'll bring you another episode, which will include interviews with Alice Grossman, Jerome Horn, and Tyler Means, 3 other winners from the top 40 under 40 program. We also today bring you our normal input from Alea Carey on Messaging Minute. I think you'll really enjoy that and the rest of our program. This is a very special edition of Comfort's Corner. I know you're going to enjoy it. Welcome to Transit Unplugged. I'm your host, Paul Comfort. Great to be with you on another edition of Comfort's Corner. And today we're taking a special look at the top 40 under 40, which is a really prestigious award in our public transit industry, started by Mass Transit Magazine. And so I'm thrilled to have with us as our first guest on today's program, Mischa Wanek-Libman, who is the executive editor of Mass Transit Magazine, one of our industry's leading publications. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, so Mischa and I, have been friends for a while since she got this job, and you've actually been in the publishing industry a long time, right? I mean, like 20 years or so. You were with the editor of a rail magazine before this?
I was started my career in 2001, which doesn't sound that long ago to me, but it's ancient by some standards. So I spent a little over a decade with a civil engineering publication. We did deal with rail transit projects, and had a friend who moved over to Mass Transit, and former colleague, publisher Emily Gwill, who many of your listeners know. And when the opportunity to fill in as executive editor at the magazine came up, she gave me a call and said, would you be interested in coming over? And I said, of course. And, the rest is history, and I don't have any plans on leaving anytime soon. It's a great industry to be in.
Yeah, and I mean, from my perspective, having done this for over 30 years, you're doing a wonderful job at Mass Transit Magazine. I love getting to every issue, and I don't just wait for the issues. I actually, multiple times a week, not only in you send out, what did you call it, like a news digest or something?
Yeah, our daily newsletter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I love getting that. And then I look at your website a lot. I actually use it for this program, as I was telling you beforehand, as a source of really up-to-date news. I have a lot of sources where I get news, but yours is definitely one of the best. So thank you for putting out a great product for our industry.
Oh, we appreciate hearing that. Thank you. It's a team effort. It's not just all me. It takes everybody on our team to produce what we do, and glad that it is helpful.
Before we get into the top 40 under 40 specifically, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, the whole industry, magazine industry, online stuff versus paper magazines, and especially going into COVID. I think it's accelerated some of the change that was happening in the industry, moving to more of an online presence. Talk to us about what's happening with Mass Transit Magazine and your view, if you want to, on the industry as a whole with that kind of shift taking place.
Yeah, so it depends, but I guess I'll speak to the business to business publications, folks like Mass Transit Magazine, the publications that focus on business and trades. Everything is moving more digital. That doesn't mean that print is going away anytime soon, because I think there's still a need for print, but everything is becoming more digital, especially in the situation like we find ourselves this year with COVID. Things are happening quickly, and we are on a 24/7 news cycle. So what early in my career, where it was 8 to 5 or 8 to 6, and then I could unplug and be gone, I've always got my phone on me. I've always got I'm always connected, and you have to be, because if you see some news come through, I may know about it and I may think it's really interesting, but there has to be a way to share that, and we have that platform to do it. So digital will become more important, will continue to be important, but there's still a place for print, where you can really get into the nitty gritty. And I'm kind of a design nerd. And we've got a really, really great creative director on the magazine who helps our stories come to life with illustrations and infographics and layout. And I think that only enhances the storytelling that we're doing.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I know that, you know, as part of my podcast, Transit Unplugged, I've toured a lot of transit operations around North America. And almost everyone I'm in has copies, the paper copies of Mass Transit Magazine, sitting in the lobby or sitting in the, the front area of the CEO or the executive's office. So, I mean, I agree with you. And I'm so happy that you plan to stick with paper because, that kind of thing gets passed around a lot. It's in the dispatch office of transit systems. Drivers, mechanics, dispatchers are looking at it. And a few copies can serve 100 people as they look at it. It sits around for the full month that you're there. So I'm glad you're thinking about you want to stay with paper too. That's good news. What is the impact, let's say, of your magazine, like your circulation or the reach of the digital / are you able to measure that effectively?
Yes. So I forget what our official numbers are, but I'd have to look at to confirm with we
It's
are
at least
audited.
20,000, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
upwards of 20 to 24,000 once
that's
you
awesome.
factor in pass along rates and things of that nature. I will tell you, with COVID happening, our website traffic has been through the roof. We're
Oh yeah,
we've seen 50% increases of page views and users and folks who are coming back to our website every day. So that's good, but then it also puts added pressure on us as communicators to make sure that we are providing the information that the industry needs.
that's great. So let's switch over now and talk about the program Top 40 Under 40. This has always been, as I've been in the industry, this has always been a celebrated thing in transit agencies. I've worked at a number of places where, someone won the award and, they'll put it up on, glass and put it up on the wall. And it's a really big deal for people. And it's a great career boost for younger professionals who are in the industry. So tell us a little about the program and your role in it.
All right. So the program started in 2008. So 2020 marks the 12th year that we've had the program. And if you think back to 2008, a lot of the dialogue happening was surrounding the knowledge cliff and what happens when these professionals with years and decades of hands-on real-world experience retire, and how do we deal with that gap that we're left with. So 40 Under 40 was designed as a way to really showcase those superstars in the industry, the folks whose impacts were felt at a system level, on a regional level, on an industry level, and who our evaluation committees throughout the years expected to continue to have an impact on the industry. And just some of our high level folks, I think we've got a pretty good track record. If you go back to the early days, we've had Eddie Robar, friend of the show. He was a former honoree, or past honoree, I should say. Catherine Egan Kellerman, CEO over at Port Authority, Allegheny County, and even more recently, folks like Kevin Quinn, of course, at MTA, and Sean Donaghy.
That award. I remember when I was CEO and he was the planning director at the time. But the picture just popped up in my Facebook memories the other day of me presenting that to him, and I sent it to him.
Yeah, so we've got a pretty good track record with the high level folks. But that said, we try to showcase the breadth of knowledge and talents that are in the industry. We have
public sector, you got private sector people too, right?
Yeah, and engineers and communicators and urban planners, researchers. So there's all sorts of avenues that people take to have a heavy influence on this industry, and this the 40 Under 40 list is a way to showcase that.
Yeah. And I mean, for people who aren't 100% familiar with what we're talking about, this is 40 individuals who are under age 40. I should have said that up front, who are recognized for their role, as Mischa said. So how does this process work? Walk us a little through because later today, after this interview, I'm going to, showcase a bunch of your honorees this year.
Mhm.
So tell us what process they went through to be selected.
So we start with an online nomination process. And I should say also that 2020, we have a growing list. More and more nominations come in each year we do this. 2020 was a record year. If we
Really?
have an average of 100 to 150 every year, 2020 we had close to 260, I think. So the process begins with an online nomination. From those, we export everything into Excel. We have an evaluation committee that is the entire mass transit team, sales, editorial, management. We go up to our senior vice president level within our publishing house. And we all read all 250 or
Wow.
260 of those nominations. We evaluate on professional achievement, innovation, as well as community and industry involvement, and compile all those scores together, average them out, and from there we get our top 40 list. So I did write an editor's letter over this year's class of
Yeah.
honorees, and because there were so many, you would think, oh, there's got to be one or two, duds that you were like, nice try, maybe next year. But these, we could have included all of them. They were all outstanding, and it's always difficult year after year to mark that line between 40 and 41, and make that cutoff. So
Yeah.
it's also encouraging to see that level of commitment, and forward thinking in the young people of the industry.
Well, that's good. Is there anything else you want to tell us about the program or anything before we get to the interviews?
No, we've got a great group of folks this year. There was a heavy mentorship element to this group's year honorees this year. And that was good to see, because they're at that weird point in their careers where, okay, they've got some experience, they've got some leadership skills behind them, but they might benefit from still being mentored themselves. So it's a good group. I'm happy to highlight, and glad you're able to highlight these folks.
Yeah, yeah. It was Jack Benny. It just came to me. That's the
Okay.
guy. Yeah. Well, Mischa Wanek-Libman, thank you so much. You do a wonderful job as executive editor of Mass Transit Magazine, and this program is a great way to help promote and celebrate younger professionals and see their career. I think we can then follow them in their career and see the impact they make going forward. Thanks so much for being with us today on this episode.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Alea Carey. I'm a communications consultant who loves working with public transit agencies. Last week, I attended an industry seminar on strategic crisis communications during COVID-19. That's right, crisis communications in the midst of a crisis. That's not a bad way to describe the situation many of us are facing right now in public transit. I thought the most important takeaway for public transit agencies was the emphasis on how to step out of reactive mode and expand from communicating about incidents, which are so often out of our control, to communicating about values and underlying issues, whether they're good or bad. Values and issues are two things we can do something about. This might look like if the incident you're communicating about involves a case of COVID-19 among employees, making sure to message what current protocols are in place to keep the community safe, what additional protocols will be added, and what organizational values are behind the actions you're taking. In brief moments between crises, communicating those values through community sponsorships and broad public awareness campaigns will help reinforce them for your audiences, building the foundation for positive relationships and deterring mistrust when an inevitable incident arises again. If you'd like to talk more about communications, crisis, or otherwise, look me up on LinkedIn. My first name is spelled E-L-E-A, last name C-A-R-E-Y.
This is another great interview on Transit Unplugged with our special episode looking at Mass Transit Magazine's Top 40 Under 40. And today, and at this moment, we're talking to Marco D'Angelo, who's actually been a pretty good friend of mine over the last few years. And he is one of the inductees in this year's Hall of Fame Top 40 Under 40 at Mass Transit. Congratulations, Marco.
Oh, thank you very much, Paul. And it certainly was an honor to be recognized by peers in our industry.
Yep, Marco is CEO of the Canadian Urban Transit Association, CUDA, and represents, kind of like APTA does here in America, all of the transit agencies up in Canada. So I guess first off, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, Marco, there at CUDA, and tell us about CUDA for those who maybe aren't familiar with it.
Sure. I'm the CEO of our association. We represent 110 transit systems across the country. In addition, we have several hundred business members, affiliates, government agencies that really represent the broad spectrum of the Canadian transit world.
That's great. And you guys have a very major online presence. I get a lot of, you guys are putting out information all the time. It's awesome. I love it. Tell us about what you all do as a group.
Sure. Currently, we're really supporting our systems and our business members in trying to navigate our way through the current crisis. But also we provide conference services, training, cutting edge research, collecting data on transit, and also making public policy recommendations and advocating for funding at all levels of government to support transit.
I can tell you, and I'm not just saying this because you're on the line, I've said this to many people, the last CUDA conference I went to, which actually was the first one I've been to, was probably in the top 5 conferences I've ever been to in the transit world. It was just a tremendous content. There was fun, evening events that were sponsored by CUDA. That one we did in a museum was just awesome. I can't wait to go back to the next conference when we can do it in person. I know that we have to do virtual probably, this year, but it was really a great conference overall. And I had a lot of fun there. And you do a great job at CUDA. You told me on Friday that you were online with a bunch of, tell us about that. That was pretty fun sounding.
Yes, well, as I was mentioning, our focus has really been on getting bridge financing for Canada's transit system so that they can maintain a high level of service so that we can get essential workers to and from their jobs, and also doing it in a way that avoids crowding. So in support of that, my chair is Alain Mercier, the head of Quebec City Transit. And the two of us were interviewed across the country last week on CBC radio stations locally to talk about what local transit, if not properly funded, what could happen to our transportation networks in the short and medium term when we've spent so many years building capital and doing these projects. It would be just a shame to impair Canada's transit network at this time where we're waiting for ridership to return post-pandemic.
That's a great message. And my understanding is that you've had a little bit of success there. Tell us the current status of what's happening in Canada as of September.
Yeah, as of September, we were really happy that our provinces and the federal government negotiated a safe restart agreement. So that provides funds to municipalities to help them meet their operating needs for the rest of the 2020 calendar year and a little bit into next year. So that's been helpful for systems to maintain service. But as you know, ridership returning to what it was in February of 2020, I think will be an exercise that will take at least a year to get back to that level. And in the meantime, we're really calling on our federal government, just as I read every day, APTA is working with the U.S. government to make sure that transit systems are able to operate in a way that we can provide safe, reliable, and good customer service that exceeds all health standards until the pandemic's over.
That's great. Yeah, it's when I was at MTA in Baltimore, CEO, I developed what I call the four cornerstones of a great transit system, and you just basically named them, which is safe, efficient, reliable, with world-class customer service. And I still think those are the cornerstones, as you just mentioned, of getting people back on transit now that the pandemic has pushed people off of transit due to the lockdowns and shutdowns we had to have. Now that they're starting to loosen up, we need people to come back. Why don't we just talk one more minute before we kind of get into another line of questions I want to ask you kind of about careers and things like that. But what do you think the future of transit is? I mean, there's been a number of articles in major publications in the U.S. talking about a death spiral and how that if we, don't get the money, maybe what you said on Friday at the radio shows, I don't know. If we don't get the money, we have to have less service. And if we have less service, we have less riders. And that could be a downward spiral. I mean, what do you see in your role as, head of transit in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, certainly a spiral is possible if budgets remain impaired, if service has to be reduced, and we need to do everything we can to avoid that. And so we're looking at different ways through CUTA's Recovery and Rebuilding Task Force, very similar to the process that APTA has undertaken as well, and that's to really think about coming out of the pandemic, how can systems be built back to be greener and more efficient and provide greater mobility. So some of the things that need to be considered is relooking at some of our long-term capital plans and really ensuring that travel demand patterns will return in a way that that we were used to, and if not, where are people needing to get to, and what are the most cost-efficient ways to get those people there. So what we want to do is make sure that the next decade is focused on providing people more mobility options and making sure that we avoid the return to a higher single occupancy vehicle use that's going to congest our roads, raise greenhouse gas emissions associated with transportation, and really not, I don't think, follow what will the needs of household budgets be coming out of what's been a very economically challenging period. They're going to want cost-effective options, and this is where transit has a role to play. And also, transit can also work to be more flexible, looking at on-demand, looking at electrification, looking at flexible routes. So there's really a bunch of things that will be where transit can really step up and be leaders in innovation and customer service.
That's great. That's a great recipe for success, I think, going forward. One of the great things that is good about Canadian transit systems is the quality of leadership that you have in so many of them. I mean, I've over the last couple of years, I've been able to become friends with people like Phil Verster and Kevin Desmond and Eddie Robar and many others. You lost one a couple of years ago who was a good friend of both of ours, Andy Byford, who went from Toronto to New York and now has gone to London to be the Commissioner of Transportation there. We were honored to have him as a guest on our program on September 1st. Tell us about his role in an upcoming conference you've got going.
Well, I mean, CUTA is trying, or we will be holding our first virtual conference. I always say trying because we haven't accomplished it yet, but we will, and we've got a great team working on that coming up in November. And so that's a first for us, as I mentioned. But what's another first too is we're really planning on highlighting international level keynote speakers, since the great thing about Zoom is we can bring, and other platforms, is we can bring everyone together from anywhere they are in the world. Andy Byford, of course, after being leader of TTC and MTA, as you noted, is at Transport for London, and we're really pleased that he's agreed to be the first keynote that we've confirmed for that event. So we're really excited to hear about how a big city like London and how important their system is, especially the underground system, to hear more about how they've dealt with COVID and what their plans are to lead people back to transit, because ridership, is returning, at least in Canada for sure. Getting north of 40, almost 50% of what it was pre-pandemic, which is encouraging. But again, it redoubles what we need to do and how important that work is. And Andy Byford knows that better than anybody.
One of the, he's been on my podcast twice now over the last few years. Once when he was at TTC and I was at MTA at the same time. And I was really happy to have him when he won that big award, APTA's big award of the large public transit system of the year. Actually, it's kind of funny. Canada has had two of those recently, right? Because you got Vancouver last year and then this one. So that's kind of great. Shows the quality of the transit services there in Canada. But one of the things that was really interesting to me that Andy told me about, and we talked about it again in the most recent one, is how he curated his career and how he didn't just take what came to him, what kind of came down the river to him, but he actually planned what he wanted to do. He moved around at different agencies to get different levels of experience so that he could have a broad, full resume that is operations, administration, all those kind of things. And I thought it was interesting as we kind of wrap up the interview here, but I'd like you to talk to a little bit. I thought it was interesting that you mentioned one word to describe yourself is motivated. This was in the interview you did for the Top 40 Under 40 magazine article in Mass Transit. Tell me what you mean by that and how that applies to other young people who are interested in moving forward with their career.
Well, yeah, certainly it was an honor to be included in the list of top 40 inductees in the mass transit list this year. And as you point out, they do ask you to give one word to describe yourself. And yes, I did choose the word motivated. And I think that's something that talks not just about me, but I think many people in our industry that get up every day to make sure that Canadians and Americans and commuters around the world can get to where they need to be. And to do that necessarily creates an environment where you need to be continuously improving and figuring out what are the next trends, what do commuters expect from us, and in the meanwhile trying to also operate a business and the advocacy that comes with that and supporting transit operations. And really to juggle all of those things requires real self-motivation, some discipline. But what's great about our industry and here in transit is the people that we work with are just fantastic. They're dedicated transportation professionals. If you look at how long people stay in our industry, I think the average tenure is certainly more than most other sectors. So it's really a tribute to the dedication that people have and our collective motivation, and I'm happy to be part of it. I know the other 39 people that were also inducted are extremely motivated, and I'm proud of them. And I read a lot of those bios, and certainly my message to people that are considering a career is that transit is an exciting one. It can involve engineering, planning, capital projects, as well as operations. We're getting into an era of more electric buses or other zero emission vehicles, so that there's technology and manufacturing, and really it's somewhere where a young person can experience several different careers as people have changing interests and things that they'd like to accomplish in their career. It's really good news to say that transit is an industry where you can really do all that, and it's been my pleasure to be part of traffic and transportation since 2003 really. So it's great, and it keeps me motivated.
Excellent. Great words to close on. Thank you so much for being our guest today on Transit Unplugged. And again, congratulations on being honored as one of the top 40 under 40 individuals in the public transportation industry in North America.
Okay. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks for being with us today on Transit Unplugged, Comforts Corner. And now we bring you another interview with one of the honorees of this year's 2020 Mass Transit Magazine Top 40 Under 40. It's my friend Ivan Rodriguez, who's Director of Government and Industry Affairs and a policy advisor to Nat Ford, the CEO at Jacksonville Transit Authority, JTA, one of the leading lights in our industry. Thanks so much for being with us today on the show, Ivan.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, Ivan and I have worked together on a number of projects over the years. Most recently, we worked together on, I think we set up the podcast interview for your boss, Nat Ford, a while ago, and then some quotes from some speeches of his that were used in some recent writings I did. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you're born in Puerto Rico, and you've got quite a great background working for the House of Representatives there and all that. Maybe tell me about your background and then what you do today for JTA.
Of course. Thanks, Paul. Thanks again for having me. Yeah, so I'm originally from the island of Puerto Rico, born and raised. My family still resides there, even though my brother and other family members have moved to the States. But I come from a very small family. We've always been involved in community, community relations, government, politics, that kind of stuff, even though I don't have no family members that had actually worked in government or ran before for any political affiliation. Funny enough, and we were just discussing that a little while ago, my families are more in the medical field, and so I was a little bit of the black sheep going and deciding to become an attorney because it was just my passion for Puerto Rico. Born there, I did my grad school there, my undergrad I did as well. And after I became a licensed attorney, I moved here to Florida, and I went down to Stetson and made a master's in law and international law and business. And after it, instead of staying in Florida, I actually went back. I worked a little bit in my hometown. I wanted to do that, go back. It's a small town. We born grandparents, great grandparents, all my lineage is from there. But then I got again involved in politics. And that's where my career started. And I really thought I was going to continue being an attorney, even though I loved politics, but I was a law clerk for a judge. And then they pulled me to work in the health department, actually helping in a federal project. And from there, I got again involved in political campaigns. And I went to work for the then elect Speaker of the House. And I was there for 4 years. We did a range of things, but a lot of my background was I was in the chambers with her as their legal and legislative advisor. I did a lot of the budget with her. I did transportation and other items, and I ascended through her ranks until I was the director of her advisory staff and basically her chief policy counsel. And after my 4 year stint with her, married, first child, we said, okay, we want to move to Florida, and that's where JTA appeared, and they had this position for a government affairs officer. And I moved here, and I always call it interesting because you can imagine coming from Puerto Rico to Jacksonville, Florida, and they have this government relations, and usually those roles are for somebody that has a lot of local relations. And I'm moving here from Florida. My relations are more Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., working with the then speaker, who today she's the congresswoman for Puerto Rico.
And who is that? What's her name?
Jennifer Gonzalez. Actually,
Okay.
She serves in the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee right now.
Oh, that's great. That's a good connection to have.
And it was by luck because she became the congresswoman in 2016. So I was already in JTA. She's wonderful, young, very policy savvy and forward looking. Sort of a lot like Nat Ford, which I know you,
Yes.
Paul, and a lot of that hearing, that forward looking trend. And then she, just like Nat, pushes you to try to excel and to your best. And that really is something that I've taken benefit here in the JTA as my role. Because when I came here, as I was mentioning, you thought that probably the role was more local. No, Nat had a grander vision. And under that vision, I found a space for what we do in the advocacy, in the policy side, and really pushing forward in the industry and in government. And it's been so fantastic, I have to say, because it not only has honed my skills and prepared me, it's great being part of the great work that we're doing here in JTA and with Nat leadership. So a couple of the things I do, as you can imagine, advocacy, grants, anything that's, I'll help with communications, preparing that forward and the agency to go into this. Our regulatory bodies in front being FTA, USDOT, locally and statewide here, FDOT. And then also is helping with the strategic communication and strategic planning for all these projects. As we all know, we have our great planners, our great engineers, but you also need to, that concept, being an attorney that I'm myself, but at the same time advocate, giving that spin outside external review to make sure that we're meeting really what those key stakeholders, being elected officials or just public officials, really what they're looking for, what they want. That's why in my application, one of the quotes I always said, over communication is not a sin. If you really relay your message over and over again, you really get them involved. And if you get them involved from the beginning, not just when you're either asking for the money or when the problem arises on the regulatory side, but you get them involved, they feel comfortable, but they also feel that they're part of the project, so they are vested that they want to see it succeed. And I find that my job is really trying to get them vested and comfortable to the project, so they also want to see it succeed.
That's great. You've I don't know that a lot of people are really understand that being a policy advisor, being kind of a lobbyist, so to speak, is a big part of public transportation. Most major transit agencies have a legislative affairs office. There's so many laws written at a state level, interacting at a city level that need to be engaged with, that affect public transportation. I know when I was here at MTA, we had an office of 4 people who were working with the city government, with the state government, with the national government, and then transit agencies often have representatives in Washington, D.C. They actually hire lobbying firms to represent them there. Tell us a little bit about that and why that's important.
I think it's very important because at the end of the day, the rules, the laws that you're mentioning are being approved, are being exercised by your regulatory body. They have the oversight, and most importantly, let's cut to the chase. They have the power of the funds.
That's
they
right.
hold
the golden rule. Who has the gold makes the rules.
Exactly. So if you make them feel so comfortable and you really know how to relay, and something that's very important, it's a two-way street. One of them is that you're following the rules, but also is helping them implement the rules, because you will always, as us being the implementers, you will find what is the practical way to implement things. And you have your customer and your ridership interfacing. And sometimes what the rule of law says really is not that in tone, and we as the providers, implementers, have to make sure that that fits perfectly. And so sometimes we're also, in the reverse side, we're helping them implement what they want to achieve. And if we can go back and make their job easier, that there's not 100 hiccups or that you're outside of the law, that makes it even better for you. One, you'll be able to succeed with your projects. And when you're succeeding with your projects, it makes it a whole lot easier when you're asking for funding, for any type of regulatory relief and other items that pop up. And frankly, again, it makes it easier just for them to commit and really believe in the vision that you have, not only for public transportation, but the vision that you have for your local and regional services that you want to implement.
That's great. And finally, Ivan, can you tell us about one particular project you've worked on that maybe you're particularly proud of?
Oh, now you're getting me in trouble. There's so many. Well, I have to say, I think I've been fortunate that our CEO, Nat Ford, and the leadership that he's put together, I've been fortunate that I have an opportunity to have a seat in the table and work or see how a lot of these projects materialize and forward. And I've been able to contribute to a lot of them. And so I cannot pick one, but I will. I think U2C, our autonomous program, is something that right now is real in the forefront, because we're helping to write these rules. We're helping. So that's where you're seeing this office, the government affairs in the industry. It's not just making sure that you're implementing right. Now we're actually building it and creating and putting one step forward and saying, FTA, USDOT, this is the items that we're finding that we need to address. And this is how we propose to be addressed. We know that in the scheme of things, it's going to be bigger because national wide, everybody's going to be because of geography or for other areas, it's not going to be a one size fit all. But there's been other projects, the route optimization initiative that we did in 2013 to 2014, flipping that switch overnight. But that year and change before, everything that we did, even before we went external, all that was fantastic. Taking over the ferry and the building that I'm sitting today, our brand new regional transportation, which was on the shelves for years and years. And really, when NAT4 came and we were able to launch RY, BRT, all these projects, then we got our stakeholders to say, yeah, we want you to continue and grow in Jacksonville and grow in Northeast Florida. So all these projects are just fantastic, but I think it boils down to mobility as a service, us being mobility integrators, and really setting Jacksonville and the JTA specifically as the cornerstone for Northeast Florida to help in economic development and be the forefront to also help in the developing that workforce of the future in the transportation industry. We value a lot making sure that the things that we do implement here, if they're successful, and thankfully all of them have been, to make sure that we push them out to the industry, and come and join us or try it out or do it, because there is much more than that traditional business service of running buses up and down. Now there's much more that we can do, and we're proving it here, and it's so exciting just to be part of that personally, of that forward-looking implementing projects of the JTA.
Well, I know we're going to hear many more great news items from JTA and you helping to implement them. Ivan Rodriguez, Director of Government and Industry Affairs and Policy Advisor at JTA. Again, congratulations on being selected as one of the top 40 under 44 industry. And thank you so much for sharing with us today some of what you do and the passion that you have for that work.
Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate this time and wish you the best of luck.
Thanks for being with us today on Comfort's Corner, where every 2 weeks we bring you insightful interviews with folks who don't necessarily have to be CEOs. Our regular Transit Unplugged episodes coming up are going to be very exciting. Rod Staples is our interview for the 30th of September. He is the head of transportation for New South Wales in Australia. We finish our Australian month, and we've got lots of other great interviews coming up for you for the rest of the year, including some from Africa coming up near the end of the year. It's going to be an exciting international extravaganza as you stay tuned to Transit Unplugged. Also, we want to remind you that the book Public Transportation, From the Tom Thumb Railroad to Hyperloop and Beyond, the children's picture book, is coming out October 1st on Amazon. And it's a great look inside the world of public transportation from the past, present, and future, with colorful pictures and fun anecdotes and stories for kids ages 5 to 15. For those of you like me who are homeschooling your kids this year, whether you like it or not, under the school system or on your own, it's a great opportunity to kind of introduce them to the subject of what we do for a living. Hope you'll take a look at it this year. Public Transportation, From the Tom Thumb Railroad to Hyperloop and Beyond, coming up on October 1st. You can pre-order the ebook now, and it's only $2.99. And then the paperback book will come out on October 1st on Amazon. Thanks so much for being with us. Hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to another great edition 1 week from today.